Okay, well, welcome into another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. I am one of your hosts, Kendall McDonald.
I'm the other host, Blake Russell.
And I'm the guest, Brendyn.
Oh, there he is. Man, I had like this whole lead up that was going to be fun. Okay, I'm going to just do it.
Start over.
I thought this was kind of funny. No, we're not starting over, but we're just going to go. So we have a special guest here today. And this special guest is actually quite famous.
He is.
Famous for something here in town. And I'm going to see if you can guess who it is. The thing that he is the most famous for here in town is playing electric guitar.
That's right.
At Fredonia Hill Baptist Church.
Legendary guitar player.
I think he dabbles in food or something as more of a hobby, but his real fame has been achieved here at Fredonia Hill playing electric guitar. And that person is, why don't you introduce yourself now?
Brendyn Todd.
That's Brendyn.
Say your full name.
Full name for the
in case they need the last name.
Hey, we're going to spend some time with Brendyn and just track his journey. The Lord has done so many really cool things in his life. He's one of these guys that is kind of from around here, from close, and the Lord has kept him here, and he's invested deeply in our community and in our church. And so just going to hear from him, and glad you're here with us. Stick around. Okay, well, we are back here with Brendyn Todd. I was just joking earlier. He does play electric guitar, obviously, here, but he also has a restaurant here in town called Brendyn's BBQ. Where'd you get that name? That's an interesting name. I don't know. Oh, another bad joke. Okay.
Yeah, no, mom was complicated with my first name.
Yeah.
Put a Y in it. Looked good in a sign.
That's right.
No, I wanted people to, when I thought about the restaurant name, I almost called it the Pig Apple. Because that's just
which is one of your sandwiches.
Yeah, it's one of our sandwiches. But I wanted people to say, "Hey, we're going to Brendyn's to eat," kind of that home feel, and then there's the pride in it. Like, oh yeah, they're coming to my place.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story that I just heard a couple days ago. I think it was a college student, and I won't say how I heard the story, but someone asked this college student where they had lunch, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Is this place downtown that had barbecue?" And they're like, "Well, what was it called?" And they go, I think it was like Brenda's Barbecue or something like that. So
whatever sells, man.
So we've got Brendyn here who owns Brenda's Barbecue here in Nacogdoches. No, just kidding.
It was the worst marketing.
I'm gonna tell so we need to get into this because we go way back with Brendyn, way before restaurants and back into Brendyn's college days.
Before barbecue was a thing.
Before barbecue was even, I don't even know that you'd been kind of even introduced to it as like what became a passion. But I got to tell this story. So, Brendyn is a fantastic musician and was leading along with Joel Harrell, friend of the pod, maybe. I don't know. Maybe this will be his first time to listen, but big shout out to Joel Harrell.
We'll send it to him.
Up in Ohio. And anyway, those two guys were leading what was then 24/7, which is cool because 24/7 kind of follows in the footsteps of Great Escape, which Blake was really instrumental in over at First Baptist. And so anyway, just a lot of neat ties. And that's where I kind of started to really get to know Brendyn a lot better was as he and Joel were leading that ministry. Well, we decided we're going to go on this retreat, and that band was going to record some things, and we're going to go on this retreat sort of deal. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take these guys. This will be great. We'll bond. It'll give them an opportunity to lead worship somewhere else and to record some music. And so we get in a van, we pile in a 12-passenger van, and it's just a great group. So let's make sure I don't miss anybody. But we had you and Heath and Joel and Christian and Parker.
I don't think Emily went.
Did she not?
Maybe she did.
Are you?
I think she did.
She did go. I think she did go.
Yeah, I think so.
Because she was part of the band at that time, so I think she did go. Yeah. So I will have to check on that. Ask your wife.
She's my wife.
Yeah, which she wasn't then. Anyway, cool story. So anyway, we all and Blake and I was pretty new around here. Blake and I had worked together at that point, and he was pretty
maybe
new,
like a month,
not very long.
Yeah.
And I just kind of said, "Hey, you want to help me and go to Oklahoma with these guys? They're going to record some music. It'd be cool for you to get to know them, even though he already did for the most part." And so we get in the car and drive to Oklahoma City, just forever away. And I didn't know these guys well, but they're just when they get together, it's just goofball city.
Yeah,
like it's just hilarious.
We were very tight.
Oh, that group was super tight.
You were in our group.
I was, yeah. I was just driving this group around, and man, the laughter on that trip was just insane. Well, they're also a little bit of pranksters, and so we were driving into Oklahoma City, I think, to lead worship somewhere. We were trying to find this church in Oklahoma City, and I got turned around somehow. Oh, yeah. I guess I made a wrong turn or something. Anyway, I needed to turn around in the van. And so we were in a bank parking lot, and I start backing the 12 passenger van up. And
I remember you saying, like, y'all look out for me, make sure I don't hit anything. And of course, my brain says, this is an opportunity.
This is an opportunity. And so I'm backing up, and Brendyn slaps the back of the van so hard. And I thought, I just said, look out for anything back. Yeah. My heart stopped, and they just fell out laughing. They thought that was the funniest thing. So that was kind of my introduction.
There were a lot of memorable moments. There were a lot in that trip.
Some are not pod appropriate on that trip, but there were definitely
one involves Joel.
Yeah, one involves Joel. Shout out again to Joel. But we are not going to tell that story on the pod. But seriously, so we go way back, even to the beginning of our relationship, being back when you were in school. So kind of maybe start from like how you got to SFA. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to SFA? I mean, just like bring us up to speed even where you are now. I want to get into the restaurant stuff, but just kind of bring us up to speed on where you are now.
Yeah. I grew up in Hemp Hill, Texas, about an hour-ish from here.
Home of the Fighting
Hornets.
Hey!
I had to remember for a second.
Yeah, I kind of caught him off guard.
Very involved in my youth group. I loved leading worship then. I was very involved in worship. I grew up, my mother played piano, my mother sang, my grandmother played piano, my uncle played guitar, and I grew up in that, kind of like Blake did.
Yeah.
My family would go to these little churches in the country woods and do their Sunday nights, and I'd sit next to my grandmother and play the, piano in C, just hit one C note.
Right.
I thought I was playing piano. So that's what I grew up, was in hymnal worship. And then learned to play guitar because my Uncle Brad, he was my hero, and got involved in a youth group and was just passionate about worship. And then continued that passion into college, came to SFA, and immediately got involved. And before 24/7, it was called Crave at the BSM.
Right.
And played acoustic there and met Philip and my friends there, which was...
Philip was with us on that trip too.
Yeah. Pre-December Tide, 24/7 December Tide was the worship band that we made. And got heavily involved in BSM and continued to do worship. And then working at Chick-fil-A, full-time college student. But at the BSM is really where my love for worship really fine-tuned. Mostly through friendships. Brian McGuire, Philip, Joel, Christian. Christian grew up with me in Hemp Hill. And so we kind of did that journey together. I picked up electric guitar. He picked it up. He learned these things. I learned these things. And then scripturally, too, we just same churches, same youth group, same college ministries. And that's really where all the chemistry bound together was at the BSM.
Yeah, I remember that group also at some point, and I'm so bad at timeline and kind of remembering what happened when. But I think you were involved in a group of guys that would come to my house and do with Christian. Would you have been in that?
I don't think so. Not on that one.
No? Mm-mm. Okay. Anyway, it was that group was some of those guys that you've mentioned, and it was cool, like, seeing the development on the worship side of things along with discipleship that you're describing, like in going through that journey, like you said, through friendship is really cool. You mentioned Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A becomes a pretty big part of your life.
It taught me everything pretty much
in that span.
Business, yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. Cause that was like you said, meaningful, taught you everything.
Yeah.
tell me about your Chick-fil-A days.
Yeah, so I'll rewind a little bit as to why Chick-fil-A came to be. I remember in high school, I surrendered to the ministry, and I didn't know what that looked like. As a kid, I'm like, I guess I'm going to be a pastor because that's all I saw.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be a youth pastor, then I'll be a pastor. And when I got into college, that started to unravel to not be the case. As far as that being a vocational, I'm going to be a pastor.
Right.
But I know the Lord called me to worship. And I remember being frustrated. Like, I can't sing. Like,
supposedly.
Man, supposedly. No,
we're still trying to get him to sing.
I can't sing.
Yeah.
My wife will tell you.
Who can sing?
Who is...
Shout out to Emily Todd.
Yeah. Bunch of fun facts there I want to say. So, I remember having this desire to sing and this frustration with God. You've given me this desire to lead worship and be involved in worship ministry. Why can't I sing? And I was forced to take the back seat and lead a band. So the ministry that I had and the band that I had, I was discipling them. I was leader. I was the administrative side of it. And that's where I kind of learned how to essentially be, quote, boss. And then Emily comes in, and we were friends before years before we even considered dating. Mm-hmm. But as soon as she started singing, I was like, wow, she can sing. And she fit into our mold very well.
So that's how y'all met is in the band?
Yeah. Her dad dropped off a CD at the BSM.
Oh, yeah.
And Gary's wife pulls me aside. Hey, this girl has a CD, and she's really cute. I'm like, okay.
I guess I'll actually listen to it then.
Yeah, sure, I'll listen to it. So she comes in, and it just blew us away. I remember having her sing the very next night at the BSM.
Wow.
Just came in audition and took the lead, essentially. But God revealed to me over that time that my wife was my Aaron. So he didn't give me the gift to sing, but he gave me Emily to kind of be my voice. And so her and I together in this band, and Joel too, it's our gifts that God brought us together and being collective and all for his glory. So that was cool, that God's testament of, I haven't given you this gift, but I'm going to show you somebody who does, and she's going to end up being your wife. Blows my mind to this day.
Yeah.
So then I get involved in Chick-fil-A, and I've always had this passion to own a restaurant. And then I'm kind of confused. How do I own a restaurant? And
Wait. Okay, back up. Sorry.
Yeah.
You feel called to the ministry, want to lead worship, and then you just inserted, I've always wanted to own a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of things.
Do those two things like live together, from younger age, or does wanting to own a restaurant come up later, like post dealing with kind of this call to worship? How does that
wanting to own a restaurant was first. I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember telling my grandmother, because my grandparents owned a restaurant for a small time. I remember thinking, I'm going to own a restaurant and call it Heaven's Kitchen, because Hell's Kitchen was a thing. So it's going to be called Heaven's Kitchen.
Yes.
The place you go to after church on Sunday.
That's right.
And then I kind of got called, not away from that, but yeah, just you grow up, you get different interests, and I want to be this, I want to be that. Ministry God took over my life. I want to pursue Jesus, whatever that looks like. And I remember standing in front of the church and surrendering to ministry, and then feeling the guilt of that when I'm in college. Like, man, my church back home, I surrendered and stood up in front of everybody and said I'm going to be a pastor. And like, now that's not the case. And there was like some shame to that. But God released me from that. It's like, who said that you're not going to be doing ministry?
Yeah.
I didn't tell you were going to be a pastor.
Isn't that funny how we fill in the blanks of what it's supposed to look like?
Right.
Yeah. I called you this. I didn't tell you were going to be a pastor. You said that.
Yeah.
So being back in Chick-fil-A and loving cooking and seeing how Chick-fil-A is a company that is just all about faith and all about business, and not perfectly, but does a great job of intertwining those two things, which is really hard in the business world. And so I'm thinking, man, I could own a restaurant. I love Chick-fil-A. I love this company. And I was working for corporate also. So I'd get to travel and open Chick-fil-A's that didn't have an owner. Got to go to Atlanta, fly there. Such a cool thing. Follow that same pattern. God said, I didn't tell you to open a Chick-fil-A. You're filling in the blanks. And that kind of unraveled with me and Emily, because after college we graduated, we had this desire to not leave Nacogdoches. Like, we both agreed.
Can you say a little bit about that, where that comes from? Because I think it's interesting. I think there's lots of people probably even listening that that's the case for them, and it puts them in can be a strange and difficult spot because they feel this call to stay here, or a desire not to leave, whatever that looks like. Call may be a strong word, but just this inkling that like I'm not ready to leave here. But then also figuring out how to stay.
Yeah,
and that can be can you say a little bit more about what that looked like for you guys, how you navigated that, and I'd love to just hear more.
Yeah, when we were graduating, as most college students, they're just itching to get out of Nacogdoches, itching to go to the next step,
right?
Whether God's called them to this city or to that job. And Emily and I both, we were very involved in our church. We loved being here, and literally the main thing that kept us in Nacogdoches was our church. I remember us saying, we don't want to leave Nacogdoches. We love what God's doing in our church, and we want to be a part of that. And we literally don't feel called to leave. Like, we're called to stay,
right?
Wow.
But we don't know what that looked like. But we just had faith in it. And I had a great job at Chick-fil-A. When I graduated, I became the GM. I got as high as I could go without owning it. Emily became a teacher. And then my best friend, so Christian, moved to Austin.
Yeah.
And then I go and visit. And then we come and they say, hey, we got to go to this barbecue restaurant called Franklin's. And you get in line at 6:30 in the morning and you eat at 11. And I ate this barbecue, and I remember the guy serving me. There's like 400 people behind me, like ready to order this barbecue. And the guy's treating me like I'm the only guy in the restaurant. Like I'm the only reason he has a job. And I'm connecting things like, oh, this is like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is not the only place that has this
you've
customer
seen
service
the
figured
behind the
out.
scenes of that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that's where that barbecue seed fit in. And then everything connects. You could ask my friends in college. I always loved cooking with fire and grilling. And so all these interests that God put in my personality really started to fine tune. So I started just obsessed with how good that barbecue was, started cooking for fun, and I catered my cousin's wedding, and then it just grew into what it is today.
Okay, so I know this about you just because I've known you for so long, but I know that during those Chick-fil-A days, there was a really significant mentor relationship that gets formed that's still, still around today. And I've gotten to know this guy a little bit more through our gym.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about Ramsey and y'all's relationship and how even watching him, and I've just heard you talk about even watching him do what he does, all woven in with his faith at Chick-fil-A was kind of a model and a mentorship for you.
Yeah. I'll say right now, y'all definitely need Ramsey on the podcast at some point.
Okay.
It's a beautiful story.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ramsey, that's your invitation, man.
Yeah.
There's we could do a
go.
whole podcast just on me and Ramsey.
Okay.
So Ramsey comes in as the new owner. I was already employed at that particular Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, give us when is this? What's a year?
Oh, man, 2010?
Okay.
Yeah, probably around then.
Okay.
He comes in as a new owner, never met him before. And anytime a Chick-fil-A changes owners, it's pretty brutal. I mean, it's different. A different culture is going to form, right? This boss does things this way. Mm-hmm. Some people are let go. New people are brought in from his previous store. But Ramsey came in the first day before he even owned it, but he essentially got the job. He sits down with us managers and he tells us his vision. And I'll paraphrase it, but Ramsey's job and what he's called to do, and he'll tell you that God's called him to this, is that Chick-fil-A is the platform for him to build other people. So whatever you want to do with your life, he makes it his mission that while you work for him, he's going to teach you whatever he can within Chick-fil-A to help you get to that position.
Oh,
so when I come in and I say, I want to open a restaurant and be your competitor, he's like, cool. Let me teach you everything that you need to know.
Wow.
Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that? And so he taught me, food costs. My job was profit management. I had to know where all the money went, and I knew his paycheck before he got it, essentially. Yeah. And I loved that. And I didn't realize how much I loved financing until I got that job. And I remember one thing in particular, whenever it was time for me to jump ship, because Brenda's Barbecue was on the side, he's letting me be the GM of Chick-fil-A and Odin Canard Company.
That's pretty
on
awesome.
the side.
Yeah.
Like who?
Yeah.
What restaurant owner does that?
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. And he tells me it was about time we were having Levi. We were pregnant. Emily was going to be stay at home, and I had the food truck because I was so busy catering. Catering alone provided for the food truck, and so it was about time to make a new season of, okay, we're going to make Brenda's Barbecue a little bit more up front. And Ramsey said, "Hey, you just need to quit." And I was like, "Dude, I'm about to have a baby." He goes, "No." He goes, "You need to quit. It's time." He said, "If you don't have a paycheck, I will make your paycheck."
Wow.
Go do Brendyn's BBQ. I will make sure you're provided for. I just remember
That's
crying.
amazing.
Like he was, and he never had to. Like
Wow.
God provided. Since day one, we've been provided for.
Wow. That's an overwhelming story. We're talking a lot about friendship and mentorship, just even in this series that we're in right now. And that's a wonderful picture into what real mentorship as it relates to friendship really looks like. Giving of yourself to somebody else. That's incredible. What a cool story. And so that kind of becomes that relationship really becomes in a lot of ways the catalyst to what even the restaurant is now.
His name is on the menu. I mean, I put a sandwich after him, and when I was renovating the restaurant, when he's done directing traffic at Chick-fil-A, he's coming in his work clothes and helping me paint the restaurant. And to this day, like he'll tell you, I'm his best friend and he's my best friend. And it's funny because we went from this boss employee relationship and like we don't even recognize that anymore. Like now we're just two best friends. Yeah, we take trips together, and it's amazing what God has done with that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. One of the things that, and I'm in music and in food, like I'm the least expert of all these. I like to listen to music and I like to eat food. That's as deep dive as I go. But one of the things I think I've seen, and as you tell the story that becomes a little more clear, is it seems like what God has done in this is he's wired you a certain way. You're talking about finance, you're talking about barbecue, you're talking about owning a restaurant, you're talking about music. All of these things are really detail oriented. It's about putting pieces together to make something bigger. I mean, really, in all those categories, all the things you like are things that people kind of geek out on, which is funny. And the Lord has brought you to a place where now you're using that in a community that He's called you to for His glory. So I think that's really important for us to talk about, Blake, because again, and we've said this before, I think a lot of times, even what you were thinking, that people view ministry as something else they have to go do.
Right.
And I think we fail to see the big picture that what God wants to do is He actually wants to work in and through us in the giftings He's given us, and many times in the social sphere, in the business sphere for His glory, like where we already are. So talk a little bit about how do you have to view your job and the way that you run your business in a way that allows you to keep the advancement of the kingdom as the first thing and the business as the second thing, because it sounds like that's the way you run your business. What does that look like? What does that balance look like? What do you have to focus on in order to keep those priorities straight?
It's extremely difficult. We have a vision that God put on our heart. The vision for the restaurant is very simple: is to be a legacy through loyalty and opportunity. And so in the restaurant, you see this big word, legacy. And that's just my desire that God's given me for Brendyn's BBQ to be a light to Nacogdoches. Not just be really good barbecue. Right. Obviously, good barbecue is how we stay in business and quality and all that stuff. But my desire is, I was called to Nacogdoches. How do I stay in Nacogdoches, and what's my impact going to be, rather than just through leading worship at Fredonia Hill? And so, just being a business, one that is an honest business. It's loyal to my customers. I'm loyal to my employees, and when I hire them, I tell them the vision. Right, regardless of what their faith, this is what I expect of you. I expect you to be loyal to me, to your other employees, to your customers, to seize opportunities. God gives us opportunities every day. How are you going to steward that opportunity? To be a legacy through loyalty and opportunity. And in any decision that we make, I have to filter through that vision that God put on my heart. And that's how I stay on that narrow path. And of course, I'm not perfect. I mean, we mess up. But yeah, having that clear vision of, Brendyn, this is what I've called you to. These are the three things that you're going to use to make the decisions to stay clear and focused. This is how you're going to do it. And come to me, and if it doesn't fit in these three things, then I haven't called you to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I think that the passion that you have for this community is probably a huge part of your success, because you talked about how you felt like you were called to be here in Nacogdoches, and that in itself is a passion that God's put in your heart for this town, and it seems like you've embraced that uniqueness of what who Nacogdoches is, and adapted that to how you do your business. And I think that to me, that seems that's why it's successful. A huge part of why it's successful is that love for Nacogdoches.
Yeah, and it's also just how we serve people without selling to them. When the snowstorm was here, it was, okay, here's opportunity. I'm the only restaurant that seems to have electricity and water right now. And the city contacted me, can you feed these people? And I'm like, yeah, actually we can. And so I have crew coming in and we're cooking and just to feed people. We love feeding Glory Gang and they do their shoes and stuff. It's more than the sales. It's stewarding what we've been given, and here's my talents. And even like whenever we serve the church, these are the talents that God has given me. How do I steward that and give that back to Him? And so we seek those opportunities in Nacogdoches because that's how we remain a legacy.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that your filter is the vision that God's given you, and it allows you to keep things straight. Mm-hmm. You're filtering things through the word that the Lord has given you, and what it causes you to do is to give Him the first of everything. Yeah. The business is for Him, so we're going to run things through the vision that the Lord has given, and keeping the first things first and then maintaining excellence in what you do is huge for your witness in a community. So that's really cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit about. I'm with you a lot, and so I randomly hear people ask questions about. People always want to talk about the barbecue business.
Yeah.
What's like the number one question you get when somebody meets you for the first time, finds out who you are, what you do? What's the number one question you get?
Oh, it's always like, what's the secret recipe?
Because barbecue's like that.
Yeah.
Probably more than a lot of other food categories. Barbecue's all about dialing in that secret recipe.
And I just lovingly tell them it's labor. I mean,
oh, that's so good.
It is,
but it's true.
Time. It's
true.
time.
Like I will tell you all the secret.
Yeah.
Like our brisket rub is salt, pepper, and coffee grounds. There's no.
That's why he's on the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, because he uses coffee.
But I drink sweet tea.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, hey,
it's a little bit of both.
That's a point on both ends.
I'm playing both sides.
That's right.
I'm playing both sides. Yeah, it's always what's the secret rub? And I'll say, well, I'll show you. And I love bringing customers to the back and opening the pit. I'm like, that's salt and pepper and coffee. They're like, there's no way. I'm like, I'll show you the shaker.
Yeah.
It's consistency. It's repetition. It's staying on top of wood. Is the wood dry? Is it wet? What's the temp? And I have two pitmasters. Like once they get hired, it is about 3 months of pretty intense training I'll give them a log of wood. Like, how does that weigh? Does that feel pretty heavy? It's not going to burn good.
Right.
So we need to dry it out. So after 3 months, they got it down. Yeah.
Wow. So the number one question is, what's the secret recipe?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hit on something because, you talked about being a food truck for a while. How long were y'all in the truck?
Like a year and a half.
Okay. And so then you pivoted to a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
But you did that at a really
hardest time of my life.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that time period, because there's a lot of different things going on personally and in the world. But yet here we are a couple of years later, and it seems like we're doing great.
Still here.
Yeah.
Emily and I both learned together with God, making decisions together, and what is a clear decision and what's a decision that we want to make. And as simple as buying a car, this is our budget. We like this car.
Yeah.
This doesn't fit in the budget, so we're not doing it. Mm-hmm. And then you find what you need. And then going to the food truck, we really want a food truck. I looked for a food truck for a year, and plenty of food trucks, but just didn't feel with the discernment from God that this is the one that we need to purchase, until we both had that feeling, and it's just the food truck is glowing.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with the building. So year and a half in the food truck.
I remember we would walk around downtown and look at different buildings and stuff like that, trying to find something.
So there was the coffee shop, and I remember, before they unfortunately went out of business, I remember thinking this would be a great barbecue spot. And like God kind of revealed that to me. This coffee shop could be Brendyn's Barbecue one day. And Emily's like, yeah. And, it was an idea. And then things were happening where that was obviously a case. And then COVID was COVID hadn't happened yet. Actually, I don't think so. So we got in the building. We agreed, okay, this building has been provided by God. We're going to lease it. And then COVID hit. So now I'm stuck in a lease with a building that needs to be completely renovated.
Yeah.
I have a food truck that's running. I can't be at two places at once. So while we're renovating, while we got the lease, we're pregnant with our second child. And then like day 3 of renovating, my father passed away. He had a heart attack. And so in that 3-month window, having a kid, father's passed away, opening a restaurant, which is a whole different dynamic than a food truck.
Yeah.
All with these COVID restrictions.
Right.
I mean, opening a restaurant's hard enough. They have to open it with these COVID restrictions.
Which, I mean, if you've been inside your restaurant, the inside part is not a huge area either. So it's, I mean, you're really kind of limited on what you can and can't do in that moment.
Yeah. So transitioning to it was rough.
Yeah.
I mean, the most challenging time in my life, and hopefully that will be the most challenging time.
Brendyn, sure. I remember, I think it's an interesting image, just even thinking of where you are now and the way that the Lord has provided and is in so many ways, like still walking you through a lot of that. I remember going to see you right after your dad passed away, and you were in the building, and you're in the middle of the renovation, and the image is like still stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
I walk in the door, and you're in there, and you're like paint clothes. You're working in paint clothes. The building is a absolute disaster mess.
Yeah.
Like wires are hanging from the ceiling.
There's no ceiling.
There's no ceiling. You've just taken down the drop ceiling, I think. And I mean, it's just like this really, and then you're painting things black.
Yeah.
And it's like this super
It's a very
dark,
hard time.
Like but here's what's interesting. You know, the scripture gives this image of God restoring things from the ashes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about that picture of you in that moment, holding the paintbrush in a building that's fallen apart. You're in like deep sorrow and grief.
Yeah.
And that was then.
Yeah.
And talk about the journey, because I think a lot of times we like to put pretty bows around those moments. But talk about the journey from that place to where the Lord has brought you now. And it's surely full of all sorts of ups and downs. And, but just kind of talk about what that process from then, with a whole lot more questions than answers to now, and what that looks like, and what your outlook is even now.
Yeah. I'll try to answer that question the best I can. When Dad passed, Emily was in Arkansas to escape COVID.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So she was given birth in July. Dad passed in April. Yeah. So COVID was really bad. We had no idea what COVID does to pregnant women.
Yeah.
So I sent my wife and my oldest son to Arkansas.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks was the window, and we'll figure it out. So while she's there, Dad passes. And I'm like, oh gosh. And so now I am with my mother dealing with that tragedy. And then I'm back home, and my sister's a nurse with COVID patients. And so because now I've been exposed to COVID, Emily's going to stay in Arkansas for, so I didn't see my wife for 6 to 8 weeks, or my son. So I was bitter with God, because I'm like, man, you've taken my dad. I can't be with my family because I have to be at work. I can't have my wife and son. Give me a break.
Wow.
But the reality is Holy Spirit said, Brendyn, I have given you a break. You've got employees running the food truck. You've got your wife and your kids are safe with their family.
Wow.
You're going to renovate this restaurant in this space, and you're going to spend time with me.
Wow.
It's not pretty. You're going to paint this wall. You're going to go sit in the corner and cry. You're going to mourn. You're going to scream. I'm going to talk a little bit. You're going to get up and go paint that wall. You're going to come back. We're going to do it again. And I worked probably 7 in the morning until midnight for weeks doing that. And I struggle to say. I remember when I did my dad's eulogy, and I remember saying it was a beautiful time. I remember I like choked my word when I said beautiful, because that doesn't really capture it. It is a beautiful time, but it's not a pretty bow.
That's right.
Right? Mourning with God and suffering, thinking like Job. I remember when Job 3, he says, my groanings pour out like water, and I'm sighing when I wake, for like the pain just doesn't stop. And I went to Job kind of like as a blueprint, like, how do I mourn and get through this? Because my reaction was, God gives and takes away.
Yeah.
We sing all the time.
Yeah.
You give and take away. I'm going to praise you in the valley. I'll praise you on the mountain. And that happens. And when that happens, I'm like, okay, I'm in the valley. I got to keep worshiping and praising. I got to be a good sport. And that's when you talk to me, and it's just like, slow down. You don't have to worship with a smile. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to smile right now. It's okay to not smile.
Yeah.
And that was just a good thing to learn what it's like in those weeks, just to be in God's presence and be suffering and be vulnerable and be honest, because my reaction was, I have to be strong and accept what's going on and be a good sport about it. And God's like, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I know how you feel. Just tell me how you feel. Mm-hmm. And that was so freeing, just to be with the Holy Spirit and to just suffer like appropriately, to be uncomfortable, but in the comfort of God, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I deviated from the question.
No, it's you're answering it. This is so good.
So prepped us kind of for even, not harder times, but it taught me and my wife just getting through that process. The industry hasn't, it's better, but costs go up.
It's still difficult.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
But it has shown me, like Israelites, we joke about them all the time, but yet we act like them. I remember when COVID was happening and with Dad, and I remember my son was going to be born, and I'm stressed out with Jack's to be born. I'm like, okay, all this bad stuff is happening. Like, what's going to happen now with my newborn baby? And I think about when the Israelites told Moses, you've brought us all the way out here just to die.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you read that, it's like, guys, look at everything God's done to bring you to this point. Why lose faith now? And that's when Moses put staff in, they walk on dry sand. And I remember having that feeling too. Like, the day before we're going to labor, I remember God saying, you're going to walk on dry sand. Like, you're good. We'll be fine. So yeah, it's just, I have learned in that season to just trust and to truly be anxious for nothing. Like, God has brought my family this far. He's brought Brenda's barbecue this far. I had a little bitty pit that wasn't mine. It was George Middlebrook's.
Yep.
And so getting in the food truck, that stress of like, okay, is this going to work? And God's like, I've brought you this far. Like, don't give up yet. Get the building. It seems like it's falling apart. I've brought you this far. Don't give up. Dad's passing. We're about to open. I've brought you this far. Don't give up. So I have to remember to slow down, look at that pattern of God's faithfulness, and continue to trust Him.
Wow, that's powerful. I think we've had enough people on this podcast at this point with varying testimonies of walking through difficult and dark days to see a pattern emerge, which is what God wants in those moments is God wants your raw and unfiltered heart in His presence. And His promise is to walk you through. Yeah. And not through pretty bow wise, but be with you.
Right. It's not going to be easy.
That's right.
But
man,
He's faithful.
Brendyn, thank you so much for opening up into that part of your life and letting us journey along with it. I want to close with this. We've got a guest coming up really soon. Yeah. And this is a guy that everybody wants to hear from. It's the mysterious bass player in our worship band, Mr. John Kennan. Mm-hmm. You guys have a funny friendship. Is there any, like, just to whet people's appetite?
Oh gosh.
Is there any fun what John Kennan story? Yeah. What should we ask him? Or is there any fun story? Anything we need to really put him on the spot with before you get away from us today?
I'm just going to tell all of our guests because he's going to hate this. Yeah. He is extremely introverted. I remember being on an elevator with him, and there's somebody coming in the elevator, and I didn't say a word because I'm very extroverted. When they got off, his breathing just like slowed down. And I was like, what's wrong with you? He said, I thought you were going to talk to those people, and I was stressed out. So what I love about John is that even though he's very introverted, like on stage, he is the opposite.
Yeah.
And I love that about him. Watch when he messes up and your day will be made.
Yeah, oh man, put him on blast. That's awesome. Well, yeah, so we have, so John is coming up. I think he's the next episode or the episode after that.
Real soon.
Yeah, really soon. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. I hope, we need to say this again. I hope in some way what this is doing is encouraging you to have similar conversations. Man, it's amazing. Every time we sat down with a guest, it's amazing to hear what's going on in their life. And if you listen, like, we don't ask really hard questions. We just go, okay, so tell me your story. And so many cool things unfold. So what might happen if you reach out to somebody and go sit down for a cup of coffee or over the dinner table? What might happen? What might you learn? How might you be blessed? How might relationships spark if you just sit down and listen to somebody's story and what God's doing? I don't know. Think about that this week. If you've got any interesting guests for us, we would love to hear your thoughts. Brendyn has given us a suggestion.
Yeah, right here on the spot.
Right here on the spot.
Yeah, I'm typing it down as soon as we're done.
But reach out to us on any of our platforms, and you can certainly email us at
stc@fredoniahill.org.
There it is. So we will see you on the next episode. Adios.